Has anyone ever told you that you're hard to read? Not because you're closed off, but because there's a duality to your personality that's both confusing and hard to place. Others notice even if they can't name it. This experience of people consistently struggling to make sense of you is a significant sign that you might be AuDHD. They've watched you be thoughtful and precise. You can be so thorough that it borders on perfectionism, but they've also watched you jump into things impulsively and be completely unprepared. You might miss obvious details, overpromise, or be inaccurate with your words. They've seen you masterfully break down complex problems so clearly that they called you brilliant. And they've also seen you sit frozen, unable to start routine tasks that they may consider intuitive. At times, you are warm and fully engaged. Perhaps some would even describe you as charismatic. Other times, you pull inward, inadvertently shutting others out. In those moments, you may appear visibly uncomfortable or aloof, and because people have seen the talkative, friendly side of you, they interpret your silence and distance as a choice, as rejection, and they take it personally. These contradictions aren't occasional. They are constant and somewhat unpredictable. While they might not reflect the whole of your personality, they certainly shape the way you experience life and how others perceive you. To understand why this happens, it helps to understand the roles of ADHD and autism individually. At its core, ADHD affects how your brain allocates attention and motivation. Engaging with tasks or responsibilities that aren't interesting or immediately rewarding is genuinely difficult, even when they're important. And because some level of novelty is needed to keep things interesting, showing up consistently or sticking to routines can feel impossible. ADHD can also make the space between impulse and action almost non-existent, initiating responses to situations before consequences can be fully considered. And because energy and engagement are so tied to stimulation, even social presence can shift dramatically from one situation to the next. Now, while ADHD primarily relates to regulation, autism is fundamentally about processing information, but not strictly information in the traditional sense. Your environment is constantly providing input that has to be received and interpreted, from sounds and physical sensations to social dynamics and what people are actually communicating beyond their words. With autism, this processing happens with an extraordinary level of detail. It can cause you to be very precise because you notice things others miss. However, it also means that your threshold for overwhelm is much lower because very little gets screened out. And this is where the need for structure, predictability, and patterns comes from. It's not about being particular or rigid, even though that's how it gets labeled. Creating structure lowers the processing load, and pattern recognition creates shortcuts that bypass the need to process every detail. When structure and familiar patterns aren't available, things can feel genuinely disorienting. Now, with ADHD or autism on their own, people around you might notice that you do things differently, but the way you do those things is consistent. You might always be the scattered one or the intense one or the particular one, but it's predictable. They genuinely know what to expect. AuDHD is very different. So often when we talk about AuDHD, the assumption is that it's just autism and ADHD together. What hasn't been fully appreciated is that AuDHD actually challenges some foundations of how we understand personality. In psychology, there's a well-established model called the Big Five, and what it shows is that related traits naturally cluster. If someone is highly organized, they also tend to be detail-oriented, structured, and deliberate. If someone is more spontaneous, they tend to be less structured and more comfortable with things being a little messy. These groupings are why people feel predictable, even when they're complex. With AuDHD, that breaks down. You have traits that seem like they shouldn't coexist in the same person: deliberate and impulsive, organized and scattered, socially engaged and withdrawn. These aren't traits that typically go together, and yet with AuDHD, it's just who you are. And how you show up depends on variables that other people don't even register. Things like sensory environment, the familiarity of the people around you, and how stimulating or draining the situation is can shape your behavior. For most people, those same variables barely make a difference, but for you, they change the entire context of the situation. And because others don't register those shifts in context, it's confusing when you respond in an unexpected way. That confusion turns into judgment. Over time, others may stop giving you the benefit of the doubt or assume you must not be trying. Now, your whole life, you've sensed that something was different, but you didn't really understand why. Maybe you thought you just needed to try harder, only to constantly feel like you were fighting against yourself. No matter what you did, you were never quite able to show up the way you wanted to. Eventually, you probably just assumed that you were flawed, but you're not. The same things that make you confusing to others are what makes you extraordinary. The depth, the intensity, the creativity, the ability to see what others miss and make connections they never would. You can't separate those things from the chaos, and if you're being honest with yourself, would you really want to? Sure, you'd give up the struggle in a heartbeat, but everything that makes you remarkable comes from the same place, and together, all of it makes you who you are. If this resonated, please consider becoming part of the AuDHD Hub community on Patreon. There are free resources and community spaces and paid options if you want additional support. The link is in the description down below. Thank you so much for being here today. I will see you next time.